Okay, so review scores. A lot of people don't like them. Others use scores as a shorthand to determine whether or not a game is worth purchasing. I, for one, actually enjoy review scores when they're handled appropriately. I think they can do a good job summarizing one's opinions of a game, but more often than not, they are handled rather poorly. Look at most game reviews on the internet by professional review sites. A 7 out of 10 is typically viewed as being bad, or at best average, by both the people scoring the game and the viewers. The situation isn't helped at all by how often 8s, 9s, and 10s are thrown around for games that should, for the most part, be considered average. I'd like to take this opportunity to give my thoughts on how I think review scores can be used appropriately, and indeed how I use review scores myself. Now, generally, the key parts of a game that should be focused on when reviewing a game are the story and gameplay, which should seem obvious, but the sheer number of people I encounter that won't buy a game because the graphics is absolutely staggering. And of those, I'm pretty sure there are a fair number of game critics that focus on graphics over gameplay and story. Now, the degree to which you focus on the story and gameplay really depends on the game. You have to first figure out where the focus is and score accordingly. While visuals and soundtracks can be the focus of a game as well, a fair number of games that use that as their main appeal generally lack in the gameplay department. For instance, Dear Esther, it's a beautiful game, but that's it. The only gameplay is walking around from start to finish. The way I tend to factor in visuals and soundtracks into my score is as bonus points. I typically state it outright on screen when I present the score in my reviews, and it changes nothing about the quality of the gameplay and story. It's more or less just icing on the cake. Now, the actual score, I tend to go for a X out of 10, with 0 being absolutely abysmal, 5 being average, and 10 being absolutely fantastic. If a game has scored any bonus points for visuals and soundtracks, I will typically hold the term for the base score. Like a game that scores a 6 out of 10 for gameplay and story will be considered above average, while a game that scored a 5 out of 10 but received a bonus point bumping it up to a 6 out of 10 will still keep its label of average, rather than above average, because the visuals are less important than the gameplay. It's kind of confusing to explain, so I hope that made sense. I use this method so that the scoring remains as objective as possible. I guess my final statement regarding review scores would be that just because the quality of a game isn't very good doesn't mean you can't still love the game. You can love or hate a game regardless of its overall quality. For instance, despite Majora's Mask being a pretty flawed game by Zelda standards in terms of level and boss design, it's one of my favorite games of all time. Really, games to me just come down to whether or not I'm having fun with it. Perhaps that's anticlimactic, but I don't care. So enjoy your games, and don't take review scores too seriously, and have a great night. Also, quick update, my next video is most likely going to be an animation. Ran into a snag with the voice acting, so we're working that out. Hopefully it will be out sometime in the next month or so. In the meantime, I may work on another review. If you guys have any suggestions, I'm down for anything within reason. Assuming I own it. I can't really afford new games at the moment.